Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s, and it's a showdown between two white boys from black families when I put Carl Reiner's The Jerk against Eric Meza's The Breaks. And man, this one was a really fun one to get through. Definitely a lot of laughs. So what's gonna come down to it is which one made me laugh the most, laughs per minute and all that stuff. So let's just dive right on in to Carl Reiner's The Jerk, which is, it's a comedy classic, a staple of the films that he did, that Steve Martin did with Carl Reiner. And, of course, they did many. And this is probably the most memorable one. The film has one of the greatest opening lines I've ever heard in a film, where you got Steve Martin saying, "I was born a poor black child." And just in, being a bum. I'm not a bum, I'm a jerk. And the movie starts out great. It's got a lot of like funny shit to it, but it gets to the point. The Jerk is like one of those movies, like the more you watch it, the less funny it gets. But it's an interesting concept because you got a white dude that grows up in a black family, and it always feels like he's different. And then when they tell him on his birthday that he wasn't a part of the family, and then he hears like some swing music, and it's like, oh, I want to go out and be somewhere. So he goes out and sees the world outside of his home in Mississippi, and decides to go to St. Louis because that's where the radio program is. Gets a job at a gas station, and gets in the phone book, and he got some nut trying to shoot him. But played brilliantly by Emmett Walsh, who ironically enough becomes a private detective in the movie, which gives a lot of like a shot, kind of a foreshadowing of what the character he would play in Blood Simple. But and then he ends up inventing some glasses, a fix for some glasses. But then he gets rich, and ends up falling in love and all this stuff. Joining the carnival. There's a lot of crazy shit. It's kind of like if Forrest Gump wasn't annoying. But the thing about it is, it does kind of get annoying too after a while, especially with the little romance he has between Bernadette Peters, and that shit gets really corny. And he starts got that crazy ass daredevil biker chick that breaks his cherry and stuff. And the film offers up a few laughs, but it just doesn't. The shit with the dog is pretty funny. The dog shithead. Like I said, a lot of cheap laughs in it. But I will say this though, the physical comedy of Steve Martin is nothing to be like scoffed at, because that dude, like the shit that he does with his face, just the way he plays being a naive moron is almost brilliant. And of course, like I said, when he worked with Carl Reiner, he did some of his best work. Now I don't know if this one is his best one. That might be The Man with Two Brains, but I don't know. That's the 80s. We're talking about the 70s right now. And as far as like comedies from the 70s, this one doesn't really like hold, like it's a staple, but it doesn't hold up with the fucking laughs as much as it should. And then we look at something like The Breaks, where it's like that one, where on the surface it may seem silly as hell. Same situation like Steve Martin, he co-wrote The Jerk with like Carl Gottlieb, and but here like Mitch Mulaney writes the script himself and stars in it as the main guy. You got an Irish white boy that thinks he's black. Same instance here. He ends up getting adopted by a black family and all this stuff, and he's fully immersed in the culture, even though he starts out life in the hood wearing a kilt and almost getting his ass killed, as they say. But the thing about The Breaks, it definitely has more laughs per minute than The Jerk. It's kind of the opposite, where The Jerk is kind of loses its funniness the more you watch it. The Breaks only gets funnier the more you watch it, because there's a lot of like sight gags that you don't usually catch on to. Like there's that scene, where the fucking stank ass hoes, as they call them, one of them has bandages on her knees, clearly putting in a lot of work on her knees, but it's these subtle things, and they have a wild ass kind of parody of the fucking pawn shop scene from Pulp Fiction. That shit is fucking nuts. But the Mitch Mulaney character, Derek, he's just so like, he's dumb as fuck. Mama, don't get me the spelling and stuff. You know how that goes. But in a clear cut fuck up, but like well-intentioned, all he really wants to do is just bang some fine-ass black women, so you really can't fault him for that, and all the one thing he's got to do to prove himself to his mother is that he needs to buy that milk. So the whole movie is him just trying to find fucking milk money. Now this one takes place in the span of a day, as opposed to like The Jerk, which is kind of like a rise and fall and fall and rise type thing. Everything kind of works out at the end of The Jerk. In a corny ass way too, where it's like that. I think about, I have a complaint with a lot of the comedies like The Jerk is like, why does it have to have a happy ending? Would it not be funnier if there was not a happy ending? Like if nothing worked out, like maybe dude died or some shit, I don't know. That's just pure speculation, but like I said, by the third act of The Jerk, I'm already like out. There's not much left that they can do, and they try to wrap it up the best they can. But The Breaks, like, man, it's solid as hell. Like there's just it's nonstop fucking laughter and insanity. And they seem to be more comfortable at playing on like stereotypes and shit. Like they make fun of pretty much everybody in this fucking movie, whether it's fucking like Asian drivers or, just white boys that want to be black, stank ass hoes, fucking people that do slam poetry, convenience store owner. Like, fucking, they got Ronaldo Ray as his uncle, as a liquor store owner. That shit, I mean, anytime Ronaldo Ray was in a movie, the shit was just fucking funny as hell. Like, anytime he's on screen, he's owning that shit. But like I said, that Mitch Mulaney dude, he really can, he might be funnier than Steve Martin trying to do this shit. It's just so like this naivety and this dumb assery. How easily this motherfucker is distracted by a hot piece of ass. Shit, we can all relate. Or I would think I can at least relate. I don't fucking know about the rest of these motherfuckers, but in the end, he finally gets the fucking milk to his mom and everything all. Because he's been pining over this chick that he ain't seen in a year, technically kind of stalking and shit, and even that shit, because just being a fucking dumbass, man, it's just so fucking funny. And you can clearly see this clearly had to have been an inspiration for Jamie Kennedy when he did Malibu's Most Wanted, because like I said, this is like just the fucking. And it's not even like in a way malicious. It's kind of more respectful. Like probably the most malicious it is the stank ass hoes and shit. So this round clearly has to go to The Breaks because man, this movie's just fun and it doesn't get annoying like The Jerk does. Because even though like the fucking Derek character is dumb as fuck, at least you can kind of relate to him. Because we all just kind of get fucking bogged down in hoes and 40s and shit. Whereas like The Jerk, this motherfucker don't know. I mean, he claimed to know shit from Shinola, but he acted like he didn't know shit from Shinola. And it might be cute to Bernadette Peters, but it gets pretty fucking old the more you watch this shit. Whereas like The Breaks, as a true hero, you want to relate to. You really want him to win because like I said, dude just fucking, and that whole fucking pool full of piss. Like that, there's some like gross out moments that are so subtle. Like they're not even really trying. Like, Carl Reiner was one of the great like comedy directors, but like, some shit like fucking The Breaks, there's something beautiful in its simplicity and it, kind of plays off of its own stereotype bullshit, so it's got to go to The Breaks on this one. So for anybody keeping score, that's 43-35. 70s are only up by 8 now. Fuck, dude. The 90s come back with a little bit, because like a lot of this shit, something like The Jerk, man, from the 70s, kind of overrated, and like the 90s had these little hidden gems like The Breaks. You may not fucking see that shit in theaters, but you see it on cable late at night, rented at the video store. That shit, that's what the cinema is all about discovery, instead of just the shit that everybody says you should watch and should like. Find them gems like The Breaks and enjoy that shit. And so if I said anything wrong, anything you disagree with, feel free to eviscerate me in the comments. I don't really care. This is a rough draft to a doctoral thesis. If you got any notes for me, feel free to add them in the comments and stuff. We're just rolling with this. You get these bonus rounds, you get your main event. Next main event round is going to be Halloween versus Scream. And so that's every Saturday. These, like I said, these bonus rounds will pop up because I don't really have a life. I just enjoy picking apart these movies and putting up against each other. So 43 to 35, 70s are still up by 8, but man, looks like the 90s could be coming back straight up sizzling. And you know what? It's my duty to please that booty.